This program is made possible by the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan.
Hi there, I'm Kiristen McDonald, and welcome to our program, Building Youth Leadership in Southeast Michigan, with the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan. This group, along with hundreds of young people from diverse backgrounds, are all working together for a better Metro Detroit, and they're focusing on schools, community involvement, safety, and opportunities. The group, with the support of the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan, created 18 projects to promote positive change by addressing the social justice issues they face every day. Take a look.
For over 20 years, the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan has had a youth-focused fund. We've been doing this work, we've seen how important it is and how beneficial to the community, but nobody else in the community really knew about it. So we said, let's do this on a really large scale for a couple years, really to teach the community about the benefit of having youth voice in any process. When we set out to plan this project, we thought, well, the first thing we need to do is a scan of the community to say what are the priority issues from a youth perspective.
We were concerned that this topic of social injustice really wasn't being talked about in our community.
I really care about increasing awareness and respect in our school.
Going into a school with a large variety of people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, it's a culture shock.
We have a lot of groups that already exist at affirmations that are targeted towards adult visitors. So we're trying to advance our programming with youth so we can bring in more youth members.
The result of the survey led to a report that had a number of different findings around education, health and well-being of the community, looking at opportunities for young people to connect across city-suburban lines.
Our project is called JAG. It stands for Justice, Acceptance, and Greatness.
Our project is a social justice curriculum.
Our project is called Shifting Towards a Multicultural Metro Detroit.
We're holding a diversity day. We're going to get a speaker in to talk to all of our students and our staff, and then we're going to hold discussions and dialogues afterwards.
The Youth Advisory Council is a group of 7 to 8 youth, and our job is to give our youth a voice and make sure that they are heard so we can better our youth programming.
Just the sheer exercise of having youth plan a project, make a budget, think about who they want to partner with, think about timelines. There's a value just in that, and that's why with any project that we fund through this initiative, we made sure that the youth themselves, while they could be assisted by an adult advisor or guided, that they ultimately were leading in making the decisions.
I think he's super crucial, and I think at the end of September when we get all of our data and final numbers and stuff, that we should really go see him.
By building these bridges between adults and youth, I think I'm understanding adults better, and I think they're understanding me better.
I've learned how to compromise, that it's not always my way or the highway.
I'm learning teamwork. That's a big thing.
I've just learned so much about the impact programs like this can have on young people.
It helps make you grow as an individual.
A critical lesson for any community is just to listen to young people, that young people have ideas, and when given the opportunity to have a voice, they'll take it, and our communities and our regions will be better for it.
Leaders on 3.
1, 2, 3. Leaders!
What we hope to see moving forward is for other foundations in the community, for civic leaders in the community, for decision makers in the community, just to stop and think as they're moving forward new ideas, the value of including youth in those discussions.
I think I'm going to continue to stay in this work somehow. I definitely will always be active in my community.
It's definitely going to help in my life going forward.
It was just cool to see that we have students that are so empowered.
If you do your part, you can help change the world.
It makes me want to continue giving back to the community and to continue to strive to do my very best to make a difference.
What a great look. You know, our goal here tonight is to have an honest conversation about the role of youth leadership in the region and how young people can help create positive change. We're going to have our discussion with 4 youth leaders who are working hard right now in their communities, and 4 adult civic leaders who themselves have played huge roles in improving their community and our region. But we are going to start with our young people, and then we're going to let the adults follow up on the conversation that we've started. So I'd like to begin with Abhijay Kumar. He's a recent graduate of Harrison High School in Farmington. He's in his first year at Johns Hopkins. And Abhi, I know that you've worked with youth leaders from around the country on issues that affect minority students. So let me throw this first question to you. Why do you think it's so important for young people to have a significant voice in community issues?
Well, the community consists of youth as a whole in general. And so when you think about youth, you have to understand that, youth, we go to school every day and we interact with people on the daily basis, right? And so what I can at least speak about is, my experiences at school, and at least my friend Ashna, who was working on a diversity resolution. And basically where this kind of, idea started for her was how at school, she would notice there were definitely instances where she felt like teachers could have intervened in situations about diversity, or people making weird stereotypical comments or something along those lines. And she thought it was really important that teachers, but also students, got more involved and started learning more about diversity education. And so she, and along with other youth, pushed for this resolution to be passed by the state, where it enforced that teachers and students learn more about diversity. And so there was also a class pushed along, and just in general, in my school district, more people learned about diversity issues.
All right, so the power of young voices here. So let me turn now to Joe Hudson Jr., who is the founding board member and the chair of the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan. He served in a variety of civic leadership roles. So Joe, how and in what areas have really young people made a difference in community issues? How have you seen it?
I had a great experience in 1967 after the riots in Detroit. I had a call from the governor and the Mayor Kavanaugh 3 days later, and they asked me to form a committee of private individuals to address the problems that had arisen from the riots. I was approached later that day by a youth leader who had a lot of experience in the city of Detroit with teenage people. And he said, "Joe, you'd be making a mistake if you didn't appoint several youth. And I've got some candidates that I'd like you to meet to talk about it." And after about 3 months, where we'd meet once or twice a month as a committee, one by one, the chief executive officer of the corporation said, "This is a novel idea. We're learning the real city of Detroit, not the way that we've been getting it packaged in the past." And I think that was an example to me of where people from the neighborhood background, from the street, saw things and heard things from a different dimension than people that were normally more active in some of the activities. And that made an impression on me, and I've tried to put that to use ever since. I'm a lot older now, too, so I literally was looking for younger people to help now.
And I think the interesting that you said, and to really pick up on, is listening. It's listening to what young people have to say. So I want to bring in now Harmony Rhodes. Harmony is a recent grad of University Prep High School for Science and Math. She's in her first year at U of M Dearborn, and she helped develop a program to promote diversity, social justice, and engagement through school programs. So Harmony, what does it really mean then to educate a community on diversity, and how difficult is that, do you think?
I think first, youth need to realize that diversity isn't just race, even though it's a very big component. And diversity can mean different religions or social classes or, different income families. And so I think once they realize that, then teachers can go about and just expound on different dialogues within the classroom. And so they need to be trained adequately through different professional developments and teacher trainings. And I think that it can be hard, which is why you have to be passionate about social justice and diversity, and you want to really expound your horizons. But as long as you're committed, I feel like once that change happens, it's very, very gratifying.
So how long did it take you to push that program to get that special class with school?
Gosh, we started the club 2-3 years ago, and so it just passed this past May. And so even though I wasn't there because it happened this past fall, I wasn't there to experience it. It was very just awestruck to me to hear people come back and say, your work really did matter.
Yeah, you got it done. Mm-hmm. All right, so then my follow-up question then is for Aaron Dworkin. And Aaron is the Dean of the University of Michigan School of Music. He's the founder of the Sphinx Organization, which is a leading national arts organization working for diversity and inclusion. So Aaron, how would you say that increasing diversity in the arts has really started to change the artistic communities that we're seeing?
Well, these issues of inclusion are pivotal. They're critically important. One of the things I love that Harmony mentioned is it's hard work. It is one of the things that I think is most critical is that we enable all of the voices in our communities to be able to express what it is that they experience on a day-to-day basis. And we're able to do that through the arts. One of the great writers, Chimamanda Adichie, a Nigerian author, talks about the danger of a single story. And what she says is the danger is not that it is inaccurate, but that it's incomplete. So this type of work of inclusion makes sure that the artistic stories that we weave that describe the texture of the composition of our communities truly expresses all of those people who make up our community.
And there's never a day where that work is done. It's continuing.
Unfortunately.
All right, well, let's move on now. I want to come on up over here to our third youth member here, and it's Kiristen Hubbard, and she's a high school senior at Belleville New Tech, and she's worked with other youth leaders in researching young people's perspectives around health and safety in the community. So, Kiristen, what do young people see that adults don't see when it comes to issues of health and safety and how it affects young people?
I think that sometimes what we kind of forget is the fact that, yes, adults have lived during times they may have experienced the same things that we have experienced, but times are different, and so we have our own experiences as well. And as youth, you can't really say, well, I know you did this and I know you did that, but like my idea, my perception, everything's different. We have to work together to be able to understand that health and safety issues are going to change. They're going to keep coming up. They're going to always be different. And in our findings, we had a lot of African American students at Ypsilanti Community High School. And so we found that they sometimes really wanted to bring up race. And race was a huge issue for them. And so that affected their health in another way. And so being able to talk to a teacher or someone that is trusted in the community, it would be better for them.
It's really interesting in talking about not dismissing the youth's voice, and sometimes as adults that they can look beyond and say, oh, they're just kids, maybe they don't know what they're talking about. So it brings me over to Stephen Henderson, and he's the editorial page editor at the Detroit Free Press. He grew up in Detroit, has had a chance to hear from many voices in the Detroit community. So Stephen, how can the voice of a younger generation really make an impact on a community?
Well, I mean, we've heard some great examples here tonight already. I mean, you've got on stage here great examples of how young people can make an impact. One of the things I think is really important to keep in mind is that don't think of young people as different or somehow apart from the rest of the community. They live in our communities, they experience all of the things that we experience as adults. They see it differently, they feel it differently, but they're just as able to respond to those things, to come up with ideas for how to make change and to make things better. Don't classify the speaker, classify the words. Deal with what they're saying and what they want to do as opposed to who they are.
All right, so let's turn now to Meaghan Wheat. She's a recent grad from Novi Public Schools, where she helped develop a social justice course for the high school curriculum. She's in her freshman year at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. So Meaghan, through the work that you've done, what kind of specific supports do you think that young people need from adults to get more engaged in the community?
You know, I think that when you ask me that, I think of the supportive adults that I've gone through and trying to make this class and everything else that I've worked in through, and that one of them, and the first one would probably be a high school teacher that I had starting my sophomore year in high school. And he was an amazing individual who just kind of, you know, if I said, I didn't like this way of learning things, he'd say, why? Like, what can I do to make it better? And reaching out for those different opinions that I have and making me feel that I can share them and that that would be okay. And I think that for adults that want to help youth, it's really important to kind of put yourself out there and like put in the reality that not all youth will say, you know, I need help or I need this or I need that. You know, people sometimes feel like they're going to be shut down and no one wants to be shut down, you know. And so I think that after that, once you built that relationship of it's okay to say, you know, like what I might think or what I feel, that it's, you know, it's really important for adults to be a resource to youth. Is that, you know, when I said that I wanted to help create this class, he was like, okay, well, how can I help you? And so I said, well, you know, we need a place to meet about like what we want this curriculum to be, how we want to present to our school board. And it was really amazing to just have an adult that said, okay, you can have my classroom after school for an hour because I'm going to be here working, and you guys can have like this corner of the room. And I think that that's really important, is that he was very genuine in what he thought about what we wanted. And it was never a, I'm going to change the course of what you want. It was a, you can filter your ideas through me. And as an adult in this school district, I can tell you what I think people might respond to or how to make this better and not to change it. And I think that that's very important, is that adults recognize that, you know, they're youth's ideas and that you should be there as a resource, but maybe not as someone who takes the lead. And so I think that that is extremely important for youth to feel like they have a support system of someone that's going to be genuine with them in their answers and their responses.
That's amazing. Congratulations to you. So I'd like to bring in now Mariam Noland, and she's the president of the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan. And Mariam has worked extensively on youth leadership development as well as many programs in Southeast Michigan. So listening to some of these young people right now, what are some of the things that you have learned throughout your life and career that you wish you would have known maybe when you were their age?
You know, I take every day as a learning experience. And it was great to hear what the four young people have already said tonight. If you put yourself into an environment where you just say, I'm open, I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn, then you change over time. So I guess the one thing I would say is always remain open, always be looking for the different perspective, and then figure out what that means. What does it mean in what I can do? How can I help others? And what does it mean that we need to incorporate even in my daily life as running a community foundation, which is the best job in the entire world because we get to do things like nurture youth leadership.
All right, so now we're going to take a look at some of the larger issues and some of the ones that Mariam brought up and where we need to kind of go from here and take a look at the youth perspective and the adult perspective and kind of get in a little bit more of a discussion. So I'd like to start with the young people over on my right-hand side. So from your perspective, what are some of the specific strategies that you would like to see incorporated to make that communication between young people and adults better? And Harmony, I'm going to start with you on that. What specifically do you think that we need to do?
I think that young people need to not be intimidated by the fact that adult allies are older and they're accomplished, and use that as a resource and not, like I said, be intimidated.
All right, so we've talked a lot about how adults can learn from our youth who are right over here, but what can adults, what can they show the youth? And Aaron, let me ask you, what can they learn from what your experiences have been as adults?
I think oftentimes young people want to model, want to emulate what they admire, what they respect. And sometimes I think literally just demonstrating something rather than necessarily even talking about it can be a strong way to try and lead the way. And one of the things that I tell a lot of young people that I mentor is to not be afraid of failure. To innovate, to be creative, to bring about a change, to change the world in some way that it has not already been changed. You have to do something new, and there is risk in that. And sometimes young people can take the risks that older people can't. We feel the weight sometimes of too much responsibility.
All right, so you have this captive audience of adults who are listening to what you guys have to say here tonight. So how would you tell them that adults should specifically engage with youth? Like, what are some good tips that if you want to kind of get through to younger people, this is how you should do it? And Kirsten, let me start with you. What advice do you have?
Break it down into our language. Like, for example, when my teacher, he might have tried to teach us things about history, and he would do it in a rap, or he might try to have us dance to it or something, just using creative ways to talk to us, but at the same time just remembering that even though these might be things that we are into or things that we listen to, don't take away from our intelligence as well, that we have good things to say, we have smart things to say, and we have important things to say as well.
What do you think, Meaghan? You're nodding.
I think that it's really important for adults to treat youth like peers in this process. Is that, we all have different experiences and we all have different backgrounds, but we all want to help, and we should all be treated as on the same level. And I think that it's just, it can be intimidating to talk to hormonal teenagers or tattooed teenagers or whatever you want to call us, but we're people and we want to work together, and I think that's the most important part to this process and the best advice that I can give.
So now we know that these interactions can cause change and can really change people's futures. So let me ask the adults here in the room, how can we make sure that there are more of these interactions?
One is mentorship. Mentorship should continue for your whole life. I've been fortunate to have fantastic mentors. And there's a responsibility that I stay in touch with them and that they respond and stay in touch with me. So if you have a great teacher, don't forget them. Or whatever has moved your life, stay in touch. I mean, I can name the mentors that have shaped my life. So that's one thing. Second, from all of the experience we've had now with dozens of youth-serving organizations run by adults, once they try it and once they get youth involved, they love it. So my advice is just try it, and on the mentoring side, stay in touch. Both people have responsibility.
All right, now I'm going to ask the four of you the same question as we kind of start to wrap up our show a little bit. But what impacts have you made in the community that you're really proud of, that we'd love for you to share with us? And I'm going to start with you, Abby.
I've started a middle school program where middle school students can come together and talk about different racial issues or just issues in their social identities. And that was the whole goal of that was to hopefully mitigate bullying in middle school and in high school. I've also helped plan a national conference known as the Minority Student Achievement Network Conference, which basically gathers students from all over the country to come talk about issues that affect minority students. And like I said earlier, I'm in Baltimore now, so I'm starting to work on a Baltimore summit to hopefully engage students from the public and private school sectors to talk about race relations in their schools and city.
That's amazing. You should be proud of what you've done. Kirsten, let me go to you. What's something that stood out in your mind that you've been able to do that you want to share with us?
Well, this kind of has to do with my senior project. So since I'm a senior, I have to pick a social issue, and I chose gender identity. So the organization that I'm part of, the Corner House Center, has given me a lot throughout my life. So I've been able to start Labels Without Labels, which is a closet for those who are trans or gender non-conforming. And I don't know, it's just really hard sometimes to just see people walk in and they tell me their struggles about how there's not many things like this, and that they wish there were more things like this, or how I've helped them that day. And it means a lot to me to be able just to say, well, here's a sweater just so you can wear whatever you want to wear or be who you are in front of your family, or if not in front of your family, one day in front of your family.
Good for you. Thanks for sharing that with us. Harmony, let me go down to you. What's something you want to share with us that you've been able to accomplish that you're proud of?
Well, I've been working with the last 2 years with adult allies from the University of Michigan, and we just got the civil rights resolution with the Civil Rights Commission passed. We co-wrote it as youth, and so it was passed unanimously, and we're very, very proud of it. And then as I continue my social justice journey in college, I am starting a radio show this month, and this is going to be focused on social justice and civil rights. And so I really just want to give youth a platform, because I know that one of the biggest issues that I found in high school was that I didn't have a platform to really get the word out, and so I want to provide that for others.
That's excellent. We'll listen for your show.
Thank
All right.
you.
And Meaghan, what about you?
I think that it really is a journey looking back on everything you've done. It started the summer after my sophomore year with a program called Summer Youth Dialogues that really just forced me to look at not only how the world affects me, but how, what I look like and what I say really affects the world. And as I've gone through with social justice class, presenting to the school board in college, and just all these different social justice aspects, I've keep looking back on how I affect the world, and in turn how it affects me. And my advice to young people would be to never forget that even your voice of something you say in a tweet or in a Facebook post affects someone else. And you have to think about that. You don't know who's seeing it, you don't know who's hearing it, and you don't know how it takes them. And that's just something that I always have to reflect on, is how what I'm doing affects other people.
All right, and so the last question then will be for our four adults, and not only just directed to the four young people we have here, but to the young people in the audience and who are watching us right now. What, from your experience, what little piece of advice would you give young people? Let's start with you, Aaron.
To just reiterate what we mentioned before about persistence and following through on things, and to never give up. And the other is to, what you hear on stage, be passionate about whatever it is that you do. I am a firm believer you never actually work a day in your life when what you do is what you love and what you feel passionately about. So once you find that, stick with it and make it your life's work.
Okay, Stephen?
don't be afraid to break the rules. People will tell you all the time what you should do next, what job you should take next, where you should live, and you should always listen to that advice, but you should also be unafraid to say, you know what, I'm going to do it differently, and I'm going to do it differently because that's what I'm passionate about, or that's the decision that will make me happiest.
All right, Joe?
I think that we all should be soul searchers and find out the unique things that are part of our possible talents. And then we're all, as individuals, empowered with the word of speech, writing, communicating, and find a home for a career, for a life, something that gives you satisfaction, play it back, and not always wait for people to come to you to get started. You go out to the people and make yourself involved.
And Mariam, you get the last word on this.
Take risks. If you don't take risks, you won't grow. And second, find people that you can surround yourself with that will help you in that process.
And we're going to have to leave it there. I'd like to thank our young people and our civic leaders for their involvement in the community, as well as talking candidly here today. If you would like to be more involved in your community, or you want to learn more about the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan, just go to our website at dptv.org. We will have this episode on demand and a link to the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan for more information, which you can then share it with your friends. I'm Christy McDonald. For all of us at Detroit Public Television, thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next time. Take care.
This program is made possible by the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan.
This program is part of American Graduate. Let's make it happen. A public media initiative made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.